Welcome to the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry's webinar, Tree Selection and Planting Site Assessment. I'm Kate Four, and I work for the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, a partnership between UVM Extension and the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. I will be moderating this afternoon. Our presenter today is Warren Spinner. For over 30 years, Warren has managed Burlington's urban forest as a Burlington City Arborist. As City Arborist, Warren oversees the planting and care of Burlington's 11,000 street trees and park trees. In addition to caring for Burlington's urban forest, Warren has an arboricultural consulting firm called Shade Tree Associates and has consulted on tree planting projects throughout Chittenden County. He has been the past chair and remains a current member of the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Advisory Council. In addition, Warren serves as a tree warden in his own town of Essex Junction. He's a longtime friend of the program and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to today's topic. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the mic over to Warren. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate, and welcome everyone as I present this from my office in beautiful downtown Burlington, Vermont. And the sun is out. Great day. Snow is gone. Frost is out. We're actually just started tree planting on the streets in Burlington today. So what a great time to talk about this site assessment and choosing high-quality tree species for your community or even in your own personal yard. So I'd like to talk about the function of the planting and what we look at when we're choosing the trees and where we plant them. So what do we want them for? Are we, shading, street canopy, traffic calming, screening, such as the picture that you see to the right? This is Letty Park Road, and as you come down that road, we have an arborvitae hedge on both sides with October Glory red maples lining the sides of the road. So it gives a nice setting as you come down through. Plus, it screens the neighborhood to the right as you're looking at this picture, and there's a shopping center to the left. There's great environmental mitigation issues that can be resolved by tree planting. And the big one that we're working on in communities around the U.S. and the world right now is stormwater runoff and cleaning of that stormwater, plus the above-ground effects that the trees do as well, and the benefits of air pollution control and energy assistance from where you place your trees around your yard and in your communities as well. Gives you a sense of well-being and satisfaction if you're in your community and you see nice tree-lined streets and in your parks and whatnot. And I've always gotten great comments about when you enhance a community's street by tree plantings. Especially, we've been doing this for a number of years in Burlington, and we've helped retree the city because we had a large elm population back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then Dutch elm disease came in and wiped them out, and we've had to start replanting like many communities around the U.S. So we've had lots of opportunity to take streets with no trees on them in Burlington and retree the street, and now seeing the great benefits that they provide. So they do a lot of good in our communities, and I think you see that as we go through this, and some of the challenges that we have when we're working to plant them and get them to continue to grow and do well. So types of planting spaces, on the far left, you'll see a downtown scenario with the tree pits, which when you get into the urban centers, that provides a big challenge to try and get the tree to survive. And a lot of this is contributed to how well the tree grows is what can you give them for soil volume and space. And when you're working in a crowded sidewalk area, it's challenging. Then you move into the center picture, which is typical of an urban street setting where you have a green belt, and that's the area between the curb and sidewalk which gives you the planting space to plant the tree. It's a little bit better space, but it can be challenging based on the width between the curb and sidewalk that you're working with. And you'll see as we go through, your tree selection will vary based on that amount of soil you have to work with, or you should at least consider it. And then you get into the town green cemetery park areas, like to the right, that's a picture of a sugar maple in Battery Park in downtown Burlington. And now you've got greater soil volume and space to work with. And the benefits of each of these scenarios, you're kind of gauging what the tree will look like. Okay, what's its mature shape, form, and height, spread, soil requirements. They're all things that we need to take into consideration when we're choosing our trees to put in these spaces. So, site assessment below ground, as I had already mentioned, is very important, and you'll see listed a number of things to look at. pH is important because you'll need to know the requirements of the particular trees that you choose. They're typically higher in urban areas. One of the reasons for that, if you're in the greenbelt area, the curb between curb and sidewalk, there's the concrete has a higher pH, and that will leach into the soils somewhat, as you know, and cause a change in the soil pH. So that's why I say know your trees that like the higher and the lower pH. And typically, when you're selecting trees for your communities where you're planting them in the green belts or in a tree pit scenario in a downtown, the trees you're choosing can handle a wide variation of that. So then your soil structure and texture, put a shovel in the ground, check it out. What type of soil do you have? And drainage and compaction are very important when you get into the heart of the downtown, in the sidewalk scenarios, and also in your green belts, because they may not perk as well. So you'll need to select trees that can handle these scenarios a little bit better. Soil contaminants, yeah, you're going to find those in an urban environment for sure. And most areas in the Northeast and in the central U.S. where you're dealing with winter, and somewhat even out in the Pacific Northwest, where road salts might be used, that's a consideration. And it certainly is in the northeastern part of the U.S. where we are, and even up into Canada. And most of the trees that we select can handle the salt, and the salt will leach out in time based on how your water will move through the soils, and compaction again plays a role in that. Industrial pollutants, usually you have a heads up on those, and if you're planting an industrial site, you're probably going to be doing soil testing to find out what's there. A lot of times it's better just to remove your soil if you can and start over, and we'll talk about ways to do that in a minute. Rooting space is very important as well, because that'll dictate how well and how big your tree grows, and if it's going to get stunted, and if so, you can get into decline issues with your trees. So that's knowing the soil volume is a very important thing, and it really comes into play when you're in the heart of your community in the downtown, where you're looking to plant trees in spaces in the sidewalks. Underground utilities are important as well, because you need to know where they are, because they'll either impact the amount of depth you can get if you're planting in a green belt area, if you have a main trunk line going below it. So we'll talk in a minute about dig safe and the importance of that, so that you know where everything is before you plant. So, for example, when I'm looking at planting on the streets, and after I see the dig safes, a lot of times you will have your main utility lines, be it cable TV, be it telephone, electric, and in our case here where we have natural gas distribution in the city, you'll have your main transmission lines for natural gas, usually running in the greenbelt area, one side of the street or the other. So and they're typically 36 inches deep, but you need to be aware of the fact that they could be higher or lower when you're planting. And I plant on top of them, otherwise I wouldn't be able to plant anywhere. That's one of those things. But what the most important thing to look out for is stay away from the service lines that go into the house or the buildings that you're planting around. in case that's typically where a failure might be. So if they have to dig up and repair that, you're not destroying the tree in the process, because and that will happen. Soil volume, I talked about that, and it does vary where you are, and it's something that is extremely important, especially in the downtown. The picture to the left of the screen that you're looking at, because your tree will not grow as well if it doesn't have adequate soil volume. And this is something that we deal with all over the U.S. and internationally as well, how to improve this. And fortunately now we have a couple of ways. They're not inexpensive, and they do require collaboration with other city departments to make it all happen. And I'd like to go ahead and show you a couple of those right now. One of them is structural soil, and this was developed at Cornell University. You might know it as CU structural soil. And this is basically taking a mixture, and you need to know that it is a soil substitute, and it's meant just for that. It is not a replacement for real soil, but it allows air, pore space, water to get down into where the trees are. I've been involved with several installations of structural soil in Chittenden County, and also have gone out of state to look at some being installed in other communities. We have a couple of projects this year that we'll be using this on as well. So what this is briefly is, if you look to the right, it looks like dirty stone. And if you're going to put this under the sidewalk or under the road, you've got to be able to put sidewalk or asphalt on top of it without having it fail settle. So it needs to meet the 95% proctor that the engineers look for. So again, it's 80% stone, 20% soil, and you can see, and to the right, if you look closely, there's a little bit of a white flake in there. That is Gelscape. It's a polymer that will suck up water. You're probably familiar with it. What that does is it holds the soil to the stone in the mixing process, which you can see occurring to the in the photo to the left. And this does work well. It's been, I think, being used in communities for at least 30 years now. But there's also other newer scenarios that you can use and product that you can use as well. And that is, this is just showing you an installation in Winooski, Vermont. They put several hundred yards of this in when they redeveloped their downtown. And that's kind of what it looks like to the left when it goes in. Usually try to put it in to a depth of 30, 35 inches or so. I've even put it as little as 28 inches in some scenarios based on the depth that you can get when you're digging down in. So you compact it in lifts, I think 10-inch lifts, and then when you get up to your top course, in this case you'll see to the right there is asphalt that's going in, and that openings you see is where the trees actually go in, okay? And then the finished product is you put a tree grade on top. The plant is put in this case, these are green vase Salcovas. And to this day, this project was done probably 8 years ago, and they're doing quite well. So here is the latest development, and I see that Jeff Young has joined us from the city of St. Albans, Vermont. They have a silver cell installation on their main street that's gone in, and we did one last year here in Burlington. We'll run stormwater through ours, and I'm looking right now at a possibility of doing another one. So I'm going to take the pointer and go in and show you to the top left. These are called the decks. There's actually two, one stacked on top of another, and then this is the roof, and if you look over here to the upper right hand, that's the top of the roof going on. I went down to look at this installation. This was on in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and this is the first one they just started on. This particular one does not have stormwater running through it. You don't need to have that to make it work. But you'll see what happens is when you set this decking system up, you put this soil here and it goes into the decks, and it gives you 100% good soil in there. And so this is one of the latest developments. It's fairly expensive, very expensive to install, but it's a great asset for the trees because it allows the tree to grow to the actual height that you want it to, with the actual having enough soil volume to do it. So anyway, that's a little bit about two different ways to get soils into a tough situation in a downtown. In closing with that, I just want to say you have to have the buy-in from your entire community, your city people, the public works department, and everybody, and so that you can do the whole project. And when you're bringing the tree in, we look at it as part of the utility. So we look in Burlington, if we have the opportunity to do this in a setting where we're going to do the entire street. We're looking at one right now that will involve 5 trees, and it's in a corner block area. So we're trying to do evaluations on cost to see what we can do. Would love to do the civil cell. We may end up with structural soil based on how the dollars work. So site assessment above ground. Okay, what do we need to know? Exposure, where are we going to place the tree? This is important, not so much in a residential neighborhood, but in the heart of your downtown, looking at building heights. A lot of times if you put the tree on the south side of the street and it's a tall building, it's going to get very little to no shade. So this does become important to know your species. Are they shade tolerant or not? And will they work in a shady area? Hardiness zone is obviously very important as well. Knowing the limits of this, in testing those limits, which a lot of arborists and urban foresters will do just so they can get a chance to try other species. It's very important to do that and know that. Again, we've talked about this a little bit, is the crown space. What does the top of that tree, you need to know about how big it's going to be because of the overhead utilities. Important to know that and not plant a really tall tree under the utility lines. Building setbacks, how close, that'll determine your tree overhaul crown width and height. In other words, the shape of the tree. And I've seen some really neat settings around the U.S. in different cities where they've used a columnar type tree to just line a street where you've got your buildings and then your street. And so that you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to prune the trees away from the buildings. Then all the infrastructure limitations that you might find, there's a bunch of them listed here: light poles, fire hydrants, parking meters, signs and traffic lights, and then pedestrian and vehicle traffic as well. That's a lot to take in a short amount of time here, but it's all about sight vision in a way with the infrastructure limitations and how you place your trees. And a lot of communities will have standards that they will work by. So a tree, like in Burlington, no closer than 30 feet to an intersection. Spacing might be based on the traffic speed of the particular roads that are in your communities. Making sure that your trees don't interfere with traffic lights and signs is important, because I'll get calls on that where I need to do some pruning around those, which is important. The pedestrian and vehicle thing really is where you place the tree if you're in the downtown, so that you're going to have to prune the tree or wait for it to get up to a certain height. So like over the streets, typically it's 14 feet. So that the truck traffic can get by, recycling trucks can go by without damaging the trees. Then when you go over the sidewalk, typically it's 7 or 8 feet. And that's important for 2 reasons. One is pedestrians. There's not a lot of 7 or 8 foot high people, but it's a standard because in the Northeast we plow our sidewalks up here, and so the machines that are used, typically you need 7 foot clearance, so that's why that's important. So I did mention this in the last slide, is the characteristics of your tree, knowing their shapes, and then using that to place them into your streetscape is really important. Mature height, size, crown spread, your forms of columnar, pyramidal, oval, round. A real big one is the fruits. Are they messy or not? The crab apple is a big one in Burlington. We have quite a few of those, and I do get a lot of complaints about that. But on the other hand, you can try and select your trees so that they have either less fruit or more persistent, or whatever you can do to minimize this with your selections is helpful. The other thing that's really neat to do is look at the traits, ornamental traits of your tree. Fall color, exfoliating bark like the birches, the flowers that they have, so that you've got some nice attribute of the tree that will be there all year round, which is helpful. Growth rate's important to know for your tree and for structure of the tree. And it says, typically the faster it grows, the weaker the wood, the slower it grows, the stronger the wood. The importance here is knowing that when you're selecting your tree species. One example I might give here is the new Acer Freemani varieties, which are the red silver crosses. They developed that cultivar so that it would have better branch attachments and stronger branch attachments, but still a fast grower. Environmental tolerances, you're going to see all of that in the downtown city environment, and your trees have to be able to deal with those conditions. Invasive tendencies, yes, that's one important one to know now. For example, quickly there is Norway maple and some of the other maple varieties that every seed that drops wants to grow. And the problem with that is it's getting into our natural areas, and all of a sudden you've got the invasives taking over the natural areas in your communities, which if we can minimize that with our planting selections, it's really a good thing. Okay, now we're getting into what do we do to prepare for when we plant. And I mentioned this earlier, this is extremely important. Every utility that comes out to mark the area that you want to plant has a different color. You should know those. You'll see orange, you'll see red, you'll see blue, you'll see yellow. Blue is for water, yellow is for natural gas in most scenarios. Red typically is for your utilities, mostly for electric, and orange are for your communication cables, and that's in general. And when you go out to mark, if you're going to do this, use white paint, because that's the generic color that's used to indicate where you want to do something. And the DigSafe number is there, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this and have probably used it at one point or another. Avoiding conflicts at planting. This is a good one because I think you'll run into this. So again, it's choosing the right tree for the right place and looking at all of the issues. Here you've got the building, and if you look at the green belt here, it's very narrow. It's probably 3 feet wide, 3.5 feet wide. The suggestion here at the time was to plant a columnar form of tree behind the sidewalk, and it makes sense because you've got a 3-story building, and if you had a broad crown tree, it would be right into that building, and they'd be pruning the back side of it off quite frequently. Limitations. This is a situation that I was faced with in Burlington a number of years ago. These trees existed. We had Norway maples, sugar maples, believe it or not, and the community wanted to plant trees on the street. This greenbelt is 2 feet wide. If you look, you can see where it's really destroying the infrastructure. It's lifting the sidewalks, blowing the curb out. So one of the one of the things here that we did to change it is went to the Public Works Department along with the folks on this street, the community, and how could we change it. So the way we changed it was to make parking on one side of the street and make it one-way, not two-way traffic, and bump the curb line out, as you see here on the left side of the street, so that we could plant trees in it. It was quite a process, but it actually worked quite well, and we basically have a nice street with trees on it now. But you've got to have a lot of money to do a project like that, because we changed the whole street design around, and really the cool thing was it was all done to put trees on the street. Right tree, right place. We've heard that a lot. Just wanted to show you this scenario where these are shade master honey locusts that were planted right on top of this building behind the sidewalk, because there was not a lot of room in the green belt to plant trees. But actually, they've actually made it work by pruning them back, and they do add some benefit to the street and the community. But it's just, you'll see this in a lot of different communities that you're in, and we have to pay attention to that with our process of selection. Oops, sorry. Making sure, excuse me while I roll through this. The other thing in the downtown community, and I've probably got around 150 tree grates in Burlington in various locations. If you have them and are going to have to manage them, you've got to be able to go back, and these tree grates are made to be cut out. As you can see by looking at these grates were cut out and adjusted to fit in here as the tree grows. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of maintaining these tree grates once they're in, because I've been into communities and seen the trunks growing right out over the grates, and the upright guards, which are already taken off these trees, have seen the actual tree trunk growing around the guards. So it's like if you're going to guy your new trees, remember after a year to take the guys off. You have to keep an eye on the tree grates as well, because they're not maintenance free. And I frequently get asked, well, and this was just the other day, do you go down and clean these tree grates out? And we do. We try to do it every year, but it's more every other year. You take the grate out, set them on the side, take a flat shovel, clean out beneath them. Then what I put back in is either wood chips or bark mulch, and then I set the grates back on top, and it just makes everything look much better, because as most of you know, they will collect trash, cigarette butts, you name it, it'll all end up in there. So it just makes your downtown better if you have an opportunity to clean them out. Point here is they are not maintenance free. So here we are, urban tree selection and planting types. Kate, I might ask now if there are any questions before I move into this.
That sounds good, Warren. And just a reminder to participants, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box. So why don't we just take a second and see if any questions come in.
Sure.
I'll just jump in here real quick too, Warren. We did have one logistical question with somebody saying they couldn't see the pointer, so I just wanted to give a reminder to hold the mouse button down if you are pointing at something.
Very good, thank you for that. I can see it on the screen, but forgot that I have to hold the mouse button down for that. So before we move in here,
Warren, looks like we do have one question here from Ben. It says, with the Shade Master honey locust example, is there a concern over proximity to building foundation?
Good question, Ben. Usually they will deflect, and the tree roots will like parallel the building foundation and not go in. But based on the size of the tree and proximity, those, in my opinion, were too close. But it depends if it's on a slab or not. If it's on a slab, it's just like a sidewalk slab. Sometimes they'll start to raise. Usually they're not that close, and normally not only shade master honey locusts or any type of tree, usually you don't have a foundation issue in the urban downtown, unless literally it is planted right on top of a foundation. Good question, though. So we will move into tree selection. Talk about types of plants that we get when we go into the nursery and look around, or we have an opportunity to use. Basically, there are three types. The bare root you usually don't find when you go into a nursery, a retail nursery. You can order them from a wholesale nursery if you want to plant them bare root in your community, and I've done that a couple of times in the past from a wholesale nursery. The reason for that is obviously they come with no soil, and you can't let them lay around. You've got to as soon as you get them, you got to hydrate them and then get them in the ground and plant them as soon as possible. The benefits of the bare root is you have a lot of your root system with you when you go to plant a tree, and it's all right where you can see it. You may have to stake the tree after it's planted, just because it may be a little top heavy without having a root system with soil around it to help it hold up. Second one here is container/process ball. That would be your middle picture down here. There. How's it? Can you see the pointer? Yeah, I think I did it right that time. Now I'm going to click it off. But anyhow, that's the container stock. My caution with container stock is that you really need to start pulling the root system apart when you pull it out of the container, because it can be root bound with circling roots, and that is something that we try to stress to correct before you plant it, to save us with some problems down the road. Balled and burlap, which I'm sure you've seen, is with the wire basket, and that's on the bottom right-hand side of the slide. That's typically where you get the bigger trees in like that. And when we plant those, we take that whole package right off the tree with a system, so that when it's in the ground, there's no wire, and the only burlap that might be on the tree will be on the bottom. And that way it just eliminates everything that might be an issue. It takes care of it. I see a question about grow bags from Brian. Yes, we use grow bags we have a nursery I might mention that we use with our citizen activist group called Branch Out Burlington, and we use grow bags to grow up our trees that we grow there. And when we bring them into plant, we use a sheetrock knife, and we cut the bag completely off and then straighten out the roots. And we'll tell you, sometimes when you get that taken care of, you have a bare root tree. So that can happen. But yes, I've used grow bags before. We use them a lot. But I think your best way to go, if you have the opportunity, is bare root. But it's just harder to do bare root. Bigger trees, balled and burlap, the thing you need to know about those is that about 95% of the roots are gone. They're taken off when you go through that process. But they will grow back if you have a good, healthy tree. Looking at my time, I need to get moving on. So I've just talked about most of this stuff here already. This shows us doing a little root pruning in the branch out nursery before we put them in the grow bag to plant them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, because I think I've hit on about everything there. This shows you the container stock. A great slide up top. That's one that I pulled out of the ground after the tree got hit by a car. Pulled it out and see the circling roots on the top. So you really need to pull those apart and pay attention to it before you plant. They are easier to move around, but you need to do some inspection on them before you plant. Best way to inspect them is if you have the opportunity while you're in the nursery, pull them out of the pot, take a look. If they look like they're really too root bound, try another one. And B&B, it's the way a lot of trees come in. It gives you a chance to get a larger tree, greater availability a lot of times. And then the disadvantage piece, they are expensive, they're difficult, they're heavy trees, there's no doubt about it. You do have the reduced root system, but if they're planted right, they'll overcome that. The challenge is inspecting the root system and getting your tree planted at the right height. If you don't get your tree planted at the right height, take a look at this picture. The actual real root system of that tree is right there. Right here and right here are adventitious roots that grew out of the actual trunk that was buried in the ground on this tree. And when this tree failed, pulled it out of the ground, you could see how deeply where the main order roots are. The point here is to really, I can't stress enough how you should really try and find where those main order roots are, and a lot of times in the nurseries they get covered over, okay? And you can probe and try to find where they are, and I can almost guarantee you that a lot of times there could be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of soil up to 8 inches of soil over the top of the root ball. Pays to inspect. What to look for on your trunk is there any issues if you're in the nursery that you can see, like right here with this tree. You look for good quality, poor quality trees, and then you go to the crown, look at how they're spaced and attached, and then with your leaves, the color, the size. If they're small leaves and they don't look good or they're turning yellow, it indicates that there's some stress with the tree and that you may want to avoid that and look for a different tree. I just mentioned with that root system I pulled out of the ground, this is a tree that we planted in City Hall Park a few years ago, and we took a good 8 inches off the top of this, but we found it. And if you look right here, that is an adventitious root that's above the main order roots. So we just simply prune those off and adjust the height, and it worked out well. So let's talk about some of the tree species that will work in an urban setting. We talked about crab apples. They have their place. I'm not going to elaborate a lot on them, but just to let you know, there's over 200 different varieties. What you really want to look for is disease resistant from apple scab, which is a leaf disease, and cedar apple rust is another one, and then fire blight is another one. And it'll tell you, if you investigate these and Google them for the species you're interested in, it should tell you if they're resistant or not. But they're pretty tough trees overall. A new one that I've started using is Amur Mackii. It's a neat tree, has a purple foliage, or like a dark, almost a bluish foliage when it comes out. And it has a white flower in the middle of summer that comes out. It is in the legume family, and it's a small to medium tree, maybe 30 feet by 30 feet. It has a very pretty bark, a bronzes type bark. As it gets older, a little bit hard to see in that picture, but so far it's working out as one of those small trees for smaller spaces for me. This one I've used a lot, the Japanese tree lilac. I've got quite a few of these around town. Seem to work out well. I would look at your cultivars if you're interested in this species and get one that's a little more columnar, like the ivory silk is one that I've used a lot. And it's worked out pretty well. But it gives you some color. They flower after the common lilac in early June, and usually it's a double white flower, and they'll last for a couple of weeks. Gives you some nice show after the crab apples go. Calorie pear, use these quite a bit around Burlington. They are great, but make sure you use a columnar variety and not the standard Bradford variety, because they do not have the best branch attachments and can fall apart. But they have a pretty white flower in the spring, and this scene that you see right here is rhododendrons, purple gem rhododendrons, the small leaf rhododendrons underneath them. So In another week or two, if you go down to Waterfront Park in Burlington, that's where this picture was taken, you'll see this same thing happening. They do have a really nice fall color as well. Quonset cherry, we have a few around. I'm a little more hesitant on the cherries being an arborist because I know that there's a fungus disease that likes them called black knot, and when that gets into them, it's hard to manage. But they do have their place, and they are a pretty tree. Jumping up in size, now we're moving into a medium-sized tree. This is my favorite birch, I have to say. It's the river birch, and I really like the heritage cultivar. If you look at the bark on the right, it's really pretty all year round, but even in the winter when there's no leaves on it, it adds quite a bit to the streetscape. If you look down on the lower left, you'll see the tree in the winter stands out, and it's probably the most insect resistant birch. It doesn't get birch leaf miner or bronze birch borer, so it makes it great for either around the home or in the streetscape in your community. Grows fast, likes a lot of different soil types. Pretty impressed with that. Japanese Zelkova, this is a member of the elm family, believe it or not, and it's the green base, and that's the one you see here. This is on one of our streets. The village green is over here. It's a little squattier, so I'm more of a fan of the green base because it's more of an upright grower. And you can see here, if you look at that shape, why it's in the elm family. We've got quite a few of these around town. They handle the urban environment quite well. They're a bit of a bear to prune, but you can do it because they have like 60-degree branch angles. We've already talked about the honey locust. Has its place. I think it's a bit overused, but we still use them. It's a good hardy tree. Talked earlier about the Acer Freemani. This happens to be the Autumn Blaze. I think it was the first cultivar developed. And since the Autumn Blaze came out, I want to say now there's probably 15 different Acer Freemani cultivars, and I've experimented with at least 9 of them, which is good because there's different characteristics and growth patterns that they have. And they don't all get this bright red fall color. Some are red-green, but I'm looking at these for their shape and characteristic. Okay, the little leaf linden, there's 2 types. The one on the left that you see with the yellow in leaf is a silver linden, which is along our bike path down by the Burlington Boathouse. Really nice tree. The thing about this tree that is striking is when it's in flower, it's got a gorgeous smell, and I've always get questions on what kind of tree is that. If you look at the picture over here to the right, these are greenspire little leaf lindens, and they're lining, I think we're on Maple Street in Burlington. They are very tolerant to the urban environment. The one downfall with this tree, especially the little leaf, not the silver, the little leaf gets an aphid on it called a pear aphid, and if you ever park your car into one of those, it'll get all sticky. So I do get complaints about it. So I get a little bit more selective about where I plant that tree, and it's just something to bear in mind. Oh yeah, American elm. We used to have 10,000 American elms in Burlington, it was said, between a lot of them on the streets. Don't think I have to give anyone listening the history on it, but Dutch elm disease kind of took these out. The one in the center of this slide I had to remove a few years ago because it finally succumbed to Dutch elm disease. And actually now I can tell you the ones over here to the right, that one I just put the pointer on, I had to cut down last year. So the resistance with the elm is the big thing, and there are a lot of new varieties out there. There's Princeton, which has been around for a while, Delaware, New Harmony, to name a few. And then there are elms out there that are not American variety that I've got. I've got probably 400 or 500 new different types of elms that I've planted over the years. And the one thing I can say about this tree, if you have a tough spot, the elm will grow in it. It's amazing. Like a poplar or a box alder, which we really don't plant in the streets of our communities. But it will grow in tough conditions. Oaks. This particular one's a bur oak. They have their place, but if you look at this photograph on the right, which was taken probably 20 years ago, they need space. That green belt is 12, 13 feet wide. And if you have a space in your community in a street, you can plant them. If not, I would reserve some of these for your parks and community spaces where you have room. But I love oaks, and we have a lot of them in this area, Vermont. So I've planted burrs, reds, the white oaks mostly, and they make a great tree. But bear in mind, you need to have soil volume for them as well. Celtis, common hackberry. This is indigenous to the Champlain Valley of Vermont. It's the only place you find it growing naturally here, which is pretty neat. It's one that I've used in the streets. It's a member of the elm family. The larger ones do have kind of an elm shape. You can kind of see it here with this one. That tree here is 40 inches across, so they need some space. But it can grow into be a great tree. It's more common in the Midwest, out in Ohio, Illinois. And the other good thing about this tree in the urban environment, it can handle a very high pH, which is good. Ginkgo. Use this a little bit, but not a lot. There's not many disease and insects issues, if any at all, with this tree. The thing to bear in mind is it's a slow grower. So if you wanted to put this in your downtown, you got to give it time to grow. Otherwise, it's a great tree, and I've seen some beautiful specimens around of that tree. Sugar maple, another one of my favorite trees, but this tree is not meant for the urban environment, is in the downtowns, because it doesn't like compacted soils or road salt as much. Although breaking the rules, we've had a few of them that have lasted quite well. The one in the lower left, right there, is still going strong. That won our first place in our Picture Perfect Awesome Tree Contest that we run with Branch Out Burlington. And if you could see where that tree's growing, you'd be amazed at how it's even alive there. There's actually no soil. I don't even know where the soil is, but sometimes they break the rules, which is neat. And this one is in Battery Park. I think you saw this one earlier, with a lot of room to grow. So you need, again, soil volume, and this one you have to be careful of salt and compaction. So I think I'm doing okay on time. Ran over a little bit, but wanted to share with you some resources, some other places to go to get information, some websites, and some print materials. So hopefully this has been helpful. Appreciate everyone's time at lunch to listen to this, and hopefully it's opened your eyes to a few things that we deal with in the urban environment when it comes to planting and caring for trees, and why we need to be careful with our selections and look at our planting sites carefully. So anyway, thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed this. Thanks.
Hey, thank you so much, Warren, and I know I'm leaving inspired and ready to head out to start planting. So thank you so much. If we do have a minute or two for questions, if folks have any questions, please just go ahead and type them into the chat box. I see a few coming in, so we'll give folks a minute to type their questions in.
Well, I'll say, as we're waiting for them to come in, that we are right into the peak of spring and planting season, and I'm going to be moving, probably 150 trees into the streets in Burlington coming up here. So, and we, like I mentioned earlier, we're starting today. So it's beautification time and replanting, so it's good.
Great. Well, on that note, Warren, a question from Brian. What is your favorite tree for urban settings?
Ooh, this is a great question because I've been asked this before, and it's very hard. So I don't really have one favorite tree. I can only say that I've got favorite trees that I wish could work better in the urban environment. But a lot of the trees that work well in the downtown, I can't say enough about the new disease-resistant American elm. That does well for me. The Zelkovas do well in the downtown. Unfortunately, a tree that I didn't talk about today that's been a staple in downtowns is the green ash. And the reason the green ash isn't being used anymore because we're seeing emerald ash borer, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. It's all around Vermont, and as soon as I heard about this pest, I slowed down and completely stopped planting ash. So ash is a good one. The honey locust is a good one as well. Smaller trees, I've had good luck with the Japanese tree lilac, the crab apples, and now the Amur Macchiae that I mentioned. And another one I did not mention is Persian Paradia. It's another tree that's it's from the Middle East, and it works well here. Zone 5 plant with a very pretty fall color. The other one is the oak leaf mountain ash. I've used that as well. Swedish mountain ash is another one, but you can't find it anywhere anymore. Common hackberry works well. So that's just to name a few that I use, but I can't narrow down a favorite. If I get out of the urban environment, I am a favorite of the white oak, shagbark hickory, and sugar maple. Let's see.
Well, Warren, there's another question here. One of the trees that you mentioned is the Japanese tree lilac, and there's a question is it better to deadhead that after blooming?
My answer to that question is if you have one in your yard and you can still reach the top of it, sure. If not, don't worry about it. And I honestly, I say the same thing about the common lilacs. They'll just rebud the next year and come right out. One thing I will say about the tree lilac is it flowers strongly every other year. So you'll have a good year, then it won't be as showy, then you'll have another good year. So it's every other year where it flowers well. Great.
And one last question here from Ben. Are there any evergreen trees that you would recommend for urban settings?
Yes, but that's a good question because we don't put them in the streetscape on streets because of their shape. A lot of times they're pyramidal and you have to raise the lower branches up, and that's for sight vision. If you move into the parks or more open settings, boy, I like a lot of them. The spruce, the white fir is a good one I like. There's, the white pines. We have a lot of these in our parks. But I'm often asked that question is, how come you don't plant them in the green belts? And it's all about sight vision. And there are some that would survive well, but they're not really meant to be planted in the streetscape. So if you have park areas, there's a lot of them that you can use that are nice. And I didn't mention the Norway spruce. That's another one that does well.
Great. Well, thank you. And a follow-up question from Ben. Are there certain trees that are better to plant over utilities?
Well, the best answer for that is don't plant under the utility lines at all. But we're often in a scenario where we are forced to or need to. So my comment to that one is that I don't care what you put for a tree under the utility lines because it is all of those lines. Your communication cables are usually lower on the pole, and they're usually about 12 to 14 feet high, and most of the trees that we plant will get 20 feet high. So you'll always have a conflict, but use those lower growing varieties. That's what I really pay attention to. And if you have the opportunity in your community to plant behind the sidewalk in a front yard with an easement, that's actually on your utility line of the street, you might consider that as well.
Great. Well, thank you again, Warren. We really appreciate you taking the time
You're
to
welcome.
join us,
I enjoyed
especially
it.
with all the planting that you have going on up in the city of Burlington. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we do appreciate your feedback. So please go ahead and, if you have a second, fill out our SurveyMonkey evaluation for the webinar today. In a moment here, I'll just go ahead and post that link in the chat box for you to be able to go directly there after the presentation today. So there it is right there. Lastly, if you are inspired to get out and plant some trees, please consider joining us next month for our Tree Planting 101 webinar. We'll be joined by Brian Sullivan, who is an arborist technician with the City of Burlington, and he'll be talking to us about the best way to plant trees. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention today and for joining us during your lunch hour. We hope you enjoyed the program, and happy spring, everyone.